Deathrender. Deathrender is an artifact equipment for 4 generic mana, equip cost 2, that says equip creature gets +2/+2. Whenever equip creature dies, you may put a creature card from your hand onto the battlefield and attach Deathrender to it. Deathrender is a totally fair Magic card. I made this deck about 9 months ago. It's okay, but I need your help to make it better. Could probably stand to be more resilient to disruption, and there's a lot more interesting things we can do, but I'm not really sure which cards or how many I should be putting in the deck. It's hard to strike a balance between flexibility, repeatability, and resilience. If you have any ideas, please let me know. Let's talk about some of the things we can do with this deck, starting with the obvious. You have Deathrender equipped to a creature, then you sacrifice or kill the creature, and then you put a big threat into play from your hand. But I think we can actually do better than that. With looping, there are plenty of Eternal Witness-like effects that we can take advantage of to return a creature from our graveyard to our hand when it enters the battlefield. If we're trying to stick to as few colors as possible, I think our best choices are probably Samwise the Stoutheart and or Acolyte of Affliction. Samwise is a 2/1 legendary halfling peasant for white and 1. It has flash and says, when Samwise the Stoutheart enters, choose up to 1 target permanent card in your graveyard that was put there from the battlefield this turn. Return it to your hand. Then the ring tempts you. The upsides to Samwise is that it has flash, it's only 2 mana, and it's easily castable. The downside is that it only returns permanents that entered the battlefield this turn. But I think we might be able to use that to our advantage to return Deathrender from our graveyard if our opponent removes it. Acolyte of Affliction is a 2/3 human cleric for green, black, and 2. With any combination of Samwise and Acolytes, and also a sacrifice outlet, we can sack the first to play the second, returning the first to our hand. If our sacrifice outlet is also our win condition, it's lights out for our opponent. Well, I guess that's it. We're done then. You can go home. But wait, there's more. We could also mill ourselves to find and return a creature from our library, but more on that later. A quick look at some of our sacrifice outlets. I think these are the cheapest modern legal, free sacrifice outlets we can use. Seer is probably our best option because scrying can be really useful. Carrion Feeder makes us a big attacker. Also, Greater Gargadon is interesting because it can't easily be interacted with when it's suspended. It might appear that we can only use it 10 times, but we can actually respond to the activated ability while it's on the stack and use it as many times as we want. Also, it's a 9/7. Yay! With Seer and our Samwise loop, we could scry anything to the top of our library. Or even better, with Acolyte, we could mill ourselves 2 cards at a time until we flip something important into our graveyard, and return that card to our hand. For instance, Garna the Bloodflame. Garna the Bloodflame is a 3/3 legendary human warrior for red, black, and 3. She gets flash, and other creatures you control have haste, which might be relevant abilities, but Garna's Enter the Battlefield ability is where she really shines. When Garna the Bloodflame enters, return to your hand all creature cards in your graveyard that were put there from anywhere this turn. Garna is great because if we already have her in hand, we can use her ability to loop with any other 2 creatures. We could sack a Grizzly Bear to play Garna. In response to Garna's Enter the Battlefield trigger, we sack her to put another creature from our hand into play. When the ability resolves, it returns the first creature and Garna to our hand, and we can just rinse and repeat. This means we can loop any 2 creatures, including ones that have Enter the Battlefield effects. leave the battlefield effects, and death triggers. Creatures like Cauldron Familiar, to drain our opponents for 1 life, which is great because it doesn't target and gains us a life. Orcish Bowmasters, to ping problematic creatures or kill players with direct damage. Wall of Omens, to draw our entire library. Liliana's Standard Bearer is also pretty cool. It draws cards for each creature that died under our control this turn. We can use it in conjunction with the Samwise loop earlier to draw our entire library. Wild Cantor makes us infinite mana. It could also be used to fix our mana or help us store mana to be used on another turn. But how do we find all these cards? Recruiters. With Imperial Recruiter and the new to modern Recruiter of the Guard, finding any pieces becomes a lot easier and a lot more reliable. We can hardcast them to tutor for our missing pieces of our combo, or for a Stoneforge Mystic to find Deathrender. We can also tutor up any creature that has power or toughness 2 or less. So with some clever sideboarding, it could help us find creature-based answers to hate pieces. They become even better if we already have our Sack Outlet and Deathrender equipped to a creature. It becomes the only card we need to start a chain to win the game. We could simply tutor for a finisher via something like Fierce Empath. We could tutor for Samwise, use Samwise to return the Recruiter to our hand to tutor for a second Samwise. We then loop Samwise, return the Recruiter again, and then finally tutor for a Liliana's Standard Bearer to draw our entire library. If our Sack Outlet is Seer, we can scry any card to the top of our library, which is helpful to assure we always hit exactly what we need. We can then draw a single card from Wall of Omens, which might be important if our opponent is punishing our draws, like with their own Bowmaster, so keep that in mind. If our Sack Outlet is Altar of Dementia, or at least one of our Samwise is an Acolyte, we can loop to mill ourselves. We mill until we flip Garna, Cauldron Familiar, and Emrakul into our graveyard. In response to the Emrakul shuffle trigger, we finish the loop by returning Garna to our hand and putting it into play. This returns all the milled creatures to hand, and then Emrakul's trigger shuffles everything else back into our library. We can then use Garna and Cauldron Familiar to loop and end the game. Here are some supporting cards I think that belong in the deck. Stoneforge is great, lets us find Deathrender, and play it on turn 3. With Sigarda's Aid, we cheat on equipment cost and can combo off as early as turn 3. Forge anew? It seems helpful to return Deathrender from the graveyard and equip it, though I'm not sure if it's right. Here are some other cards that I've considered. They might help by tutoring for Deathrender, making equip costs cheaper, recurring Deathrender from the graveyard, etc., etc. There's also a possibility to win with Conflagrate if you really wanted to. My original deck list was white, red, black, mostly for Imperial Recruiter and Garna. Thanks to Recruiter of the Guard, I think we can make it mostly white-black, though I'm not exactly sure how many recruiters we should play. It might be better, though perhaps risky, to run a slimmed-down version and use more of the slots for protection and interaction, only comboing off when the coast is clear. I'm not really sure. I'll put a link to the Moxfield deck list in the video description below. Lastly, what should we name the deck? Mardu Deathrender seems fine. It's descriptive enough, but it seems like a waste of opportunity not to name the deck something unique. Renderbender? Dewblade? Whatever this is? If you have a good idea, maybe leave it in the comments below. That's it. That's the end. I have nothing else to say. Congratulations, you've made it to the end. Thank you.